Okay, hello everybody and welcome. Thank you very much for coming along today to our Select Ireland event on Erasmus training. In case you haven't heard or know who Select Ireland is a group of schools that are based in Cork, Dublin and Galway. And on the call with us here today, we have representatives in those schools. In Dublin, we have ATC, Atlas, Emerald Cultural Institute, Centre of English Studies and the Horner School. In Galway, we have Atlantic Language Galway in Dublin, myself from Bridgemills Galway Language Centre, and from Cork, we have Cork English College and ACT in Cork. For today's event, we have two presentations to bring you on Erasmus training and the work of Select Ireland. And we have the opportunity to ask any questions. If you would like to do so, please put your questions in the chat box, or you could follow up with us later via the Select Ireland email address, and we'll be happy to reply to any questions that you have. We'd ask you during the event if you can just make sure that you are muted so that we don't have any extra noise, so that we can hear clearly from our speakers. And we hope that today is informative, and today will be the first of a number of events like this that Select will be bringing to you on Erasmus training and the links that you can form with Erasmus funding and Irish language schools. Starting off then today with the first part of our presentation, we have Chris Farrell, who's connecting with us from Centre of English Studies in Dublin. And then we will have a second presentation from Sylvia Greevy, who's with us from ATC in Dublin. And then we will have John Daly from Atlantic Language Galway in Dublin, who'll be dealing with questions and answers at the end of the event. And in total, we should be finished in about 40 minutes. So Chris, if I can pass over to you first, and if you can start when you're ready.
I certainly can. Oh my God, I'm not sure what that is. Okay, so just to introduce myself, my name is Chris Farrell and I am Head of Training and Development with Centre of English Studies. And I look after all of the teacher training courses for our whole group. And we're primarily focused, obviously, in this presentation on the offering in Ireland and what Erasmus courses are being offered in Ireland at the moment, especially at this period of growth for teacher training in Ireland. I'm particularly going to focus on two main areas of opportunity and interest in terms of Erasmus, in terms of teacher training in general. And that is the fact that the Erasmus Plus program 2021-2027 was recently launched last spring, which more than doubled the amount of funding available for the Erasmus program. And also it really widened the scope of the types of projects and types of classes which fall under or qualify for Erasmus funding. And this is of great interest to schools in the ELT sector, particularly obviously in the European Union as Ireland still is. Erasmus is broken, it's a couple of different areas, but really the areas we're looking at are KA1 and KA2. KA1 is really the big area for a lot of Irish schools, and this is the mobility, staff and learner mobility, and this is where we have the teachers traveling for teacher training courses, and as Sylvia is going to talk about, pupils traveling for language development courses as well. I'll touch briefly on KA2, which is the partnerships and cooperation, which again is of interest, but is something which will be a slower burner going forward. Obviously, the elephant in the room is the B word and Brexit, and Brexit is going to be a boon to the Irish teacher training market due to the fact that over the coming years, Erasmus Plus funding, which typically had gone to UK providers, it is going to be filtered towards Ireland. And even if a fraction of it is filtered towards Ireland, it is still really, really big for the Irish ELT sector because there's less providers, obviously. What we're looking at in terms of key action one, obviously we looked at that mobility in the school, in the field of education, and things like mobility, language plus something else. And you look around, and Sylvia is going to talk about the different type of courses available. All of these courses in the KA1 mobility, in the key action one mobility, must include 2 or 3 of the key priorities highlighted by Erasmus. Now, when you are a French or German or Italian agency and you're putting forward candidates for Erasmus funding, obviously you will go through your local agency, and the application or the granting of funds is down to the local agency. So some local agencies insist on the course meeting at least 2 criteria, some insist on admitting 3. So it really does depend on your local agency. So my advice for agents or for anybody booking individually would be to really create a relationship with your local Erasmus agency, your government agency, in order to ensure that you are meeting the needs which they specify in order to qualify for Erasmus funding. But when I talk about the 4 priorities which a course must meet, I'm speaking not only to people who will be booking courses, but also people who are looking to plan and run courses. Courses must include, or should include, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the following. Inclusion. So when we talk about inclusion, inclusivity of a range of minority groups, people from disadvantaged backgrounds, things like immigrants, sexual orientation, all of these are part and parcel of what might be included in terms of course content or in terms of accessibility. So it really is a big priority for Erasmus, and it is a consideration for people applying. Second priority is, does the course include digital transformation? Does it include the integration of technology, exploitation of ed tech, digital education, and things like that? And this is, this is part and parcel. A huge amount of courses will include this, even if it is just a language development course with a blended component, and it does seek to redefine or modify education delivery in some sort of way. So this is an important consideration for the type of courses we are creating and offering in Ireland. Third, and it's another big priority, is focusing on the fight against climate change and the environment. This is a little bit interesting coming from a fund which supports mobility of people moving around. But obviously what we're looking at is sustainability in education and sustainability of courses and that moving forward as an integrated part of even language development courses, promoting green living, things like that. And fourth, and it is a reminder that frequently Erasmus Plus is a political tool in terms of funding. Participation in democratic life, civic values, critical thinking, media literacy is the fourth priority. So does your course include something like that? And are you going to integrate that successfully into elements of even a basic CLIL course, something like this? So what does that mean? That means that even if you are a provider who is creating a course such as language development for teachers, the course must include some of these priorities in order to qualify for Erasmus funding. So it's really, really important that providers, you are integrating these values and these priorities into your courses, but also agents, you are ensuring that you're booking with institutions who provide this in order to ensure that the funding is successful. The granting of funding is successful. KA2 really briefly focuses on cooperation, peer learning and exchanges at a European level. So it's to fund high-level integration between different providers in a European context. So for example, it could be a select member school in Ireland cooperating with a school in France and a school in Portugal in order to create transdisciplinary projects which are long-term sustainable and meet the priorities of the Erasmus program. What's interesting about this is that there is a huge amount of funding available, and the projects are potentially quite transformative in terms of building relationships which could then move on to KA1 or provide platforms which could then move on to KA1. So I think it's a massive opportunity for schools in Ireland, and it's also massive opportunities for agencies to be able to bring people together in some sort of way, bring institutions who might align in some ways in order to be able to create these cooperations and to move KA1 forward as well. Finally, in terms of the application for funding, in order to become an accredited sender, I suppose, an institution or an agency which sends, you must gain accreditation through Erasmus, through your local agency. It's not too difficult. It's just something you have to go through. So in order to gain that accreditation to successfully send groups and all the way through, but as a provider, you don't need to become a member. All you have to do is host So you can host without becoming an accredited Erasmus member. You just have to create your Erasmus account and you get your organization ID, or join an existing Erasmus Mobility Consortium, which is one avenue towards this. That's a really general introduction to the step-by-step process. What is KA1, what is KA2, and where we stand as a sector with Select, and where agencies might stand in terms of sending. I hope Sylvia is going to shed a little bit more light, but please ask me any questions in the chat as we go on.
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much. Also, we would encourage you, I've put our contact details for Select in the chat box. After this event, if you have specific questions, please follow up with us via email, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have about that general introduction that Chris has given, or any specific points that you have to raise. We'll pass on to our second presentation today, then. That's with Sylvia Greevy from ATC in Dublin, and Sylvia is going to give us some more information now about Select Ireland courses and the possibilities for connections with schools in Ireland. So Sylvia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I'm Sylvia Greevy, and I work as a sales manager for ATC Language School in Dublin and in Bray. We are now focusing on the K-Action 1 mobility for pupils and for staff. Very important action for all the school in Ireland, and the staff mobility in particular is direct not only to teachers but also non-academic staff, and with all the staff trainers that are working with young learners. So the different kind of actions available are the job shadowing, the teaching assignments, and the course and training. With the course and training are those that we are going to focus on mainly today, because they are closer to what we normally do in the day-by-day running of our schools. And the second action we are looking at is the KA1 for pupils. In particular, the available formats for this kind of action are group mobility of school pupils, short-term learning mobility for pupils, and long-term learning mobility for pupils, which is quite a new entry for the Erasmus Plus. Very important, because a massive amount of the funds are now used by the European Union to fund long-term mobility for learners, young learners and trainees. You can see how long the students and the staff can stay abroad for each kind of action. But remember that it's also available a blended kind of system, where there is always an element of virtual activities as well, which is additional to the physical mobility. Now, I give you a few samples of courses available for staff mobility, but remember that we are now finalizing our Select guide on Erasmus Plus with all our courses in it, and it will be made accessible to the Select schools. So some examples are the language development for teachers, staff, and students. So English language development for teachers and educational staff, or for example, public speaking for academics, English and general English intensive plus business, or speaking in general English or intensive plus speaking skills. Another example are the methodology courses. So professional refresher course for teachers of English, or for instance, using technology in the English language classroom, which is very interesting new course of methodology. Some schools are now asking for augmented reality used inside the classroom. So for sure, a very important methodology course that is really close related to the digitalization of the schools. Another example is the CLIL courses, Content and Language Integrated Learning. Is not just the theoretical CLIL, but also special courses for teachers of geography, for instance, or visual art, or history, or a language development for English teacher with CLIL approaches and methods. which are really interesting as well. Some courses are mainly focused on culture and innovation. Among these courses, there is life, language, and literature, but it could also be national heritage, culture, and history. Program on the English for 21st century skills, and this is actually a course that can be used for young learners as well in the short-term mobility action. When we talk about the K-Action 1 project for pupils, learners, or trainees, we are talking about two different kinds of formats: the short-term pupil mobility program and the long-term pupils mobility program. The difference obviously is in the length of their stay, but also the contents of the program. In particular, a short-term pupil program can be a group stage for 1, 2, 3 weeks in Ireland, who's coming for a specific topic, a training on a specific topic, which would be prepare for a digital workplace. It could be a course on sustainability and green economy and green jobs, on diversity and inclusivity, but also courses on EU citizenship and active citizenship in a democratic country, and in general, many other tailor-made programs. A short-term school group can be also come over to Ireland for integration program in an Irish public schools. They normally last these courses 1 or 2 weeks, and an entire group, school groups, can integrate in an Irish public schools, normally in the countryside. The long-term pupils mobility programs are a new entry in the Erasmus Plus 2021-27 and is a way of funding the high school program. The students travel individually and they can come over from 1 month up to 1 year. So it's a very interesting opportunity for many students throughout the European Union. Now, what I want to remember here today is that Select Schools wants to become a new platform that you can look at to find partners for a KA1 or a KA2 action of the Erasmus Plus. And so you can use the funds to come over to Ireland. And there is, and Ben is here, one is quotation, say the how Select Ireland schools can contribute to promoting Ireland as a premium destination for English language students. It's very important because the Select Ireland is a group of 9 premium independently owned schools of English. And I normally used to call them boutique schools that have a similar background. They offer similar range of products. And if you look at this platform, if you look at the 9 members and what they offer and what they do, you will always find a high tuition standard, very high quality, excellent customer care. Remember that most of our clients become our friends and they do many courses with us. Once you try a KA2 action, as Chris said before, with us, you will then continue to come over for a KA1 actions. I'm pretty sure about that. One of our abilities is to be smart and slick and fast compared to big corporations, and therefore we can tailor-make programs. And one element is very important of the Select School is the innovation, the ability to change and to listen their clients and be always proactive and innovate. And this is also a sign of reliability, professionalism, but also honesty. Remember that there is always a good balance between the quality and the price of our courses. So the 9 schools in the 3 cities in Ireland create one whole group that you can actually approach for every kind of program, because whoever is in the group, we always find a way to satisfy your need. And this is very important. Now have a look at the schools that are part of this big family of Select. Today, I represent ATC language schools, the first one here in Dublin and Bray, our fellow member Atlas Language School, Center of English Studies, Emerald School of English, and Horner School of English, and they are all based in Dublin, the capital city. In Cork, we have ACT, and then Cork English College. We have Bridgemill Language Center in Galway, and Atlantic Language Galway. The three cities that you can come to do your Erasmus Plus program are Dublin, the capital city, cosmopolitan urban center, very lively with plenty of artistic and cultural events and festivals. Cork, which is the island's culinary capital, rich of history and tradition, and Galway, the city of festival and the getaway to the beautiful wild Atlantic way. I always call Galway the city on the cliffs. So Ireland is magical. Select Ireland is quality, professionalism, and friendship for all the schools and organizations that are looking for a partner in Ireland. So thank you so much for listening to us. And if you have any question, we are available now. Patrick, please, you can go on and continue with the event. Thank you so much.
Sylvia, thank you very much for that. That's great. In terms of just what you've heard, then we've just had a very brief introduction to Erasmus and the application process, Key Action 1 and Key Action 2, and then going on from Sylvia, then connections for schools in Ireland and the kinds of courses that you can connect with. If I could just bring John Daly in at this point. Sylvia, can I get you to stop sharing your screen there for a moment, and we'll come back into view for everybody. Great. John, if I can bring you in, John Daly is in Atlantic Language Go in Dublin. John, just a few questions with regard to filling in a bit about the background of Select. If you can just tell us about briefly how Select Ireland came together and what is this grouping of schools?
Yeah, thanks, Pat, and thanks to Sylvia and Chris. I think they have really captured really what it's all about, but maybe I can add a little extra illumination to it. Look, you have to wonder, what is nine schools? Why are they promoting themselves in this fashion? What's the advantage? And it's never easy to explain that very quickly, because we are all individual schools and we're promoting our own programs. But I suppose uniquely now, 9 schools have decided to come together and trust each other and collaborate with each other to provide a platform for Ireland as a great destination for Erasmus programs or language programs in general. And I think this has been happening now for almost 24 months. We have been meeting regularly on a monthly basis. We have been discussing the common issues that we have as schools, the challenges that we face, and we are bringing our schools closer and closer together by meeting, collaborating, deciding on how we want to promote Ireland as a premium destination, because you can get all sorts of qualities of schools, and I'm sure as agents and teachers you have had different experiences. I think I can safely say that the 9 schools that are represented here today are people who are extremely well respected internationally in industry. There are some great people on the call here today, people who've been in the industry for over 30-40 years. They've built up reputations and they are very successful in their own right, but they're looking beyond their own school and seeing, look, Ireland as a destination is a place that we would like to promote together, to have a consistent approach. So some years people would love to go to Dublin, but they may decide that the following year, Cork is a destination that I'd like to go to, or the following year, Galway. So who do I go to? So, well, Select is one of the places that you can go. And I think you can be assured that you have 9 schools who are very clear what each school is doing. We're discussing these programs. We're having this webinar today to try and give you the sense that there is a joint up approach. the academic directors in the schools are working on these programs. They're very aware of what the priorities are required so that you get the right product. So when you apply for your project, that the program and the learning outcome that you get when you come to Ireland, if it's Dublin or Cork or Galway, will meet that requirement so that you have a successful program and that you can continue to apply for funding. So it's a practical step. It's schools coming together who have excellent reputations. We're all accredited, internationally accredited. We're all vetted. We all have developed our reputations over many, many years, and we take a huge pride in what we do. And we want that to be consistent across the 3 cities. And within those 3 cities, you have fantastic destinations to come for your students or for teachers or for staff who will hopefully fall in love with the various destinations, but equally may decide, I'd like to go to Cork next year. I'd like to go to Galway. So here you go. You have Select. It's a one-stop shop. It has the programs that you need. It has huge teaching experience. It has great pastoral staff working in each of the schools. And that's what we're hoping to provide to you. So that's, in a nutshell, Pat, that's what Select is trying to achieve.
Great, John, thank you very much. And John, specifically honing in on the Erasmus scheme then, the Select schools, sort of a combination question here, are the Select schools ready for Key Action 1 and Key Action 2 partnerships, and do they have experience in these fields of being recipients or partners of Erasmus funding and programs?
Well, I can speak for myself, but I know that we've been putting a massive effort into getting these programs ready. And we have been discussing that with some of the other school owners and also the academic directors. So again, you know, there's a huge experience across all of these schools. They have been teaching young learners, they've been doing adult courses, they're doing specialized English courses. So the expertise academically that's in each one of those schools is something that just doesn't come overnight. You know, you have to build that. You have to make sure that the staff have that teaching expertise, that experience is built over years of dealing with groups coming in, teacher training. This is not something that you can just switch on overnight. It is developed over years. It's promoted, it's continuous professional development inside the schools. And all of the schools here have a very strong continual professional development within their schools. And you can see that in the feedback that comes from many of the teachers and staff. So I would say, yes, Pat, the experience among the 9 schools here is second to none in Ireland.
Okay, great, thank you. John, in terms of, you mentioned the academic staff who are dealing with these programs, Select has an opportunity for partners to meet with these academic staff. Can you tell us a bit about the teacher training development programs that are on offer via Select this year, where people have an opportunity to connect with these academic staff that you've mentioned, who are high quality and understand the Erasmus programs?
Well, I think that's best illustrated by the kind of ambitious plan we have this year. We're running a academic training day in each of the schools. So one of the academic staff in each of the schools has picked on a subject matter that's very relevant to the mobilities that are happening in some cases. And each of us have met, come together and decided we will focus on, this is our area of expertise here in Atlantic. Chris may have an area of expertise, ATC, and so on and so forth. And so we put together a calendar for the year. Like, for example, we have 21st century skills, focus on creativity, critical thinking in June of this year. You have developer learner autonomy in September. You have going digital in October in Horner School. You have global citizenship in Cork English College in November. Foster critical thinking is going on in Atlas in March. So, I mean, again, that didn't happen overnight. That has been discussions among the schools, deciding, okay, where do we lead? Where do we leverage the best teaching ability and the areas that we're focusing on in each schools, and put your best foot forward. And that's a practical example of where teachers associations can join those webinars for free and see what the schools are offering.
Great. And John, in terms of the programs you've just mentioned there and general questions for partners for Select Ireland, the contact details are, these details are on our website, that's correct?
Yeah. And they're available on this presentation today, but you'll get us at info-select for our email, and you'll also get us on our Select hyphen for our website as well. So again, this is a place where you can now go, you can ask the questions, you can look for information on Cork and Dublin and Galway. You can decide if you wish to do something between 2 cities or 3 cities. You may have an ambitious number of students that you'd like to send over the next year. You don't want to go to one city, maybe one school, the capacity is an issue. So you decide to talk to Cork at the same time. If you go to select, we'll be able to answer that question and we'll be able to say, yes, we can split this mobility among 2 schools, among 3 schools, among 3 destinations. The 3 schools will obviously cooperate and discuss and work in practical terms to make sure that they can come to Ireland successfully to 3 cities or 2 cities, depending. So this level of cooperation and collaboration that's going on is the key message that I'm trying to get across here today. You know, it's something unique, I think, that you have schools who will literally can pick up the phone to each other and talk to their accommodation managers, talk to the academic managers and say, you know, I have a group here last year, this is what they did with me, this is the level we pitched it at, these are the notes from the group that came last year, so we can carry on the baton. And we know that, and we can talk to that person and get the inside track as to how we can continue the success of the program in Galway next year. So this is the kind of baton changing that's going on between the schools, and also being able to go to select and find out and get the information on how can I do this? How do I get back to my national agency? Kind of help them through the process if they're not familiar with sending staff. They might be used to sending students, young learners, but they might now be interested in sending staff. And I mean, the mobility is very ambitious in what it can offer now. And these new programs that the 9 schools are offering cover a range. It could be administrative staff in the university. It can be academic staff in the university. It can be administrative staff in secondary schools. It's getting the word out now that these mobilities are available across schools and their organizations and universities and higher education. We're here to cater for all of those staff, not just young learners, or maybe it was teacher training in the past, but it has broadened out.
Yeah, great. John, thank you very much. That's great. And that's John Daly at Atlantic, Galway and Dublin. Just a few other questions, if I can, while we're on the call. Janice Horner from Horner School, if I could just bring you in for a moment. Janice, in terms of keeping up to date and connectivity with Select, you've been running some of the social media streams. Tell us briefly where people can connect with us and get some more information.
Yeah, we're building up our following on our Select page on LinkedIn, and also we're working very closely with Sonny from Cork English College and Axel from Patrick School Galway Language Centre, and the Instagram and the Facebook is kept up to date. So please follow us on those platforms. Everything that we're doing, all of the events are listed, are promoted through there. Our website, David Horner from Horner School has been very active on the Select website, and he's put up an events page. So every event that we're running is there. You can read full information, especially for the teacher training webinars that John was talking about earlier. Every director of studies, there's a bio there explaining their background. The depth of knowledge that each of those director of studies holds is fully listed, and each webinar that they're presenting is there. So there's a range of topics, I'm sure, that are of interest to many of the agents and teachers, etc.
Great, Janice, thank you very much for that. Maro at Emerald Cultural Institute, if I could just come across to you for a moment, Maro, if you could just comment briefly in terms of the role perhaps that agencies can play in connecting applicant schools with schools like the Select Ireland schools for potential partnerships in the future. Would you be able to comment on that, Maro?
Thank you, Patrick. No, the agency can certainly play a very, very important role, because as we have seen in the past, many of the Erasmus programs which were implemented previously, yes, the initiative very often start in a local school, in a local environment. And maybe there were, in some schools, there were some teachers who were appointed on purpose. In some other cases, there was the goodwill, the enthusiasm of an individual teacher. But very often, these efforts were somehow frustrated by, logistic issues, technical issues, and so on. So that's where the agencies can play a very, very important role. And we have seen this. We have seen this both in terms of creating an awareness or helping to create an awareness about these programs and facilitating the implementation of the programs. It's the synergies between schools, local schools, agencies, and of course the providers in Ireland are the synergies and the cooperation is essential.
Mara, thank you very much for that. Chris, if I can just come back to you, Chris Farrell at CES, with regard to today, we learned quite a bit about the Key Action 1 stream that you had mentioned, and that is the immediate deadline, which is coming up in February. The Key Action 2 deadline, then the deadline is later on, and perhaps we could have another event, perhaps in March, with regard to Key Action 2 partnerships and the deadline for that, which is in May, I think.
It's in May, it'll be the end of May. What's interesting about the Key Action 2 partnerships is that there's a minimum of 3 partners in these schools or other education institutes, but only 2 of them really have to be within the European Union. The third can be outside the European Union as long as the inclusion of an external partner is justified by the type of work that that partner does. You know, so if you do have a partner in Brazil, for example, it's possible, and the funding can apply to the Brazilian partner, but there must be a reason to have a non-European Union partner. So there is potential for expansion beyond Europe with this funding as well. Yeah.
Okay, and Chris, that feeds in a bit into Kevin's question, which we have in the chat box there about students or applicants from non-EEA countries who are looking to be parts of schemes, that they can become parts of those partnership schemes as long as there's justification from the project for inclusion of those partners.
Well, actually, Turkey became an associate member of the Erasmus Plus project in October last year. So individual members and associations can apply for funding through the Centre for European Union Education and Youth Programs in Turkey, which is their local agency, Kevin. So what you could do is, I've just posted up the link. If you click on there, individuals or organizations can go through and register with them in order to access your funding. And it's the exact same process you would go through if you're in Italy or if you were in Iceland. You know, it's all a straightforward local agency deal, which is one of the really interesting things about Erasmus Plus. It is going through, the funding is released by a local agency. So to stress again, from an agent perspective, you do have to create a relationship with your local agency to ensure that you are meeting the criteria, because it will be them who are deciding on the funding.
Chris, thank you very much. Okay, we're coming up on the end of our time on this event today. So Chris will hopefully be connecting back with you then in March time for a Key Action 2 webinar, which will follow on from today's and focus on Key Action 2 funding. A recording of today's event will be available on the Select Ireland YouTube website, and that'll be available from tomorrow, where you can re-watch this event, and please pass it on to anybody else who might be interested. We're also putting together a guide of programs, Erasmus funded programs for select schools, and we will make that guide available. Can you make sure that you have sent us your email address if you connect with us at info@select-ireland.com? Send us your email address to make sure that we can send you on a copy of that guide, and you can learn more about the programs that are in select schools that are available for funding. Special thanks to our presenters today, to Chris Farrell at the Centre of English Studies, to Sylvia Greevy at ATC, to John Daly in Atlantic and Galway for taking questions, to the other Select Ireland schools who are on the call, Atlas in Dublin, Emerald Cultural Institute, Horner School in Dublin, myself in Galway, Bridgeman's Galway Language Centre, and in Cork we have ACT in Cork and Cork English College. We thank you for your time joining us today. We know it was short notice. We will have a bit more lead-in time for our next event, which we'll hope to hold in March. And in the meantime, we'll be in touch with you. We'll send out any information we have. Please keep an eye on our social media channels, on our YouTube website for recording of this and other events that Select have been involved in over the last year. And we look forward to catching up with you again soon. Do please email us your email address to keep us informed and linked up with you. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.